Okay, podcast number two in understanding the holographic information systems. And I want to put in here that this is different from the holographic teaching systems that I talk about in connection to the Pillar Project. But it kind of runs on the same type of technology where those of us who get the link up to that portion of our reality in the fourth dimension, new types of fourth dimensions, we will get that information according to where we have been positioned due to our energy system and due to our type of genetics, as in where we have been in place in the hierarchy of reality. And as I said, it is holographic and it does not as such run in what we call power pillars, but it definitely does run in some sort of pattern or hierarchy, whether it's a horizontal hierarchy or it's a vertical hierarchy, all depending on what type of genetics that you have got. So that means in the worlds that we are now being connected to, there will be people that have what we call a holographic horizontal insertion, and they will remain there until they are no longer operational. And that's, for instance, androids are horizontal. They are not meant to rise up to higher potentiality. They're engineered for a purpose, and they run as long as they have functionality, and their purpose is to do a specific type of job. And once that job is done, then they will be annihilated and cease to exist. And we have had some of the same ideas in the different groups that have taken over our reality field. And that is some of the issues of what we call the shells and what's left on the timelines, because they have not been effectively good enough to clean these things up on the timelines, and in that technically have destroyed their own holographic networks. But you can ask, why have they not cleaned it up well enough? Well, because they have technically used their type of holographic technology inside a reality that function in a completely different way, which you understand if you have done both the whole transition science courses as well as the template science courses as well as the perception logs. You will there understand, okay, there probably is a mismatch between holographic network code systems and the technology that the incoming races have used. They have used the technologies of their culture and adapted it and implemented into our reality. And those of you who are computer-wise, you will know that you have to have a specific operational system that is in alignment with specific programs. And if that program is not suitable or adaptable to that operating system, then it will not work. The plugins will not work. So this is also the understanding of a holographic reality. So why are these races undergoing or changing us to the degree that they are? Because they need to change. Sorry about that. They need to change our plugins. Let us use computer language here because it makes it easier to understand. But beware, we're not talking binary codes. We're not talking hexadecimal sequences that are connected in patterns of 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever. That's the virtual reality, and that connects to the transhuman agenda. They use binary codes, they use algorithms, they use virtual reality, they use computers or machines to do this. We're here talking about a different type of alien or extra systemic technology. And that's why I shifted it from alien to extra systemic. And it goes in alignment with host fields that are inserted like scalar fields into our original reality program. And I'll go further into that when I begin to talk about how the new reality program is actually built up in forms or in terms of technology to the degree that is possible to transfer this into the English language, because it's all code sequences. Like you're looking at, again, if you want to do the movie The Matrix, when Neo is looking at all of the binary codes, well, you learn to look at it as an operator that are working with these complex information systems. You learn to read this any hacker knows how to read these code systems, right? They know, oh yeah, that's that sequence that. They learn to see these many digits that are put together in the hexadecimal, and they translate it right away. Their brain has been adapted to do so. And again, these humans that are capable of doing that is the human version of some of the Android biometric neural networks that are in Grace. So they have been engineered to be able to do so. And you can say some of the ones that have not succeeded in that one, they are suffering from other side effects of having that neural capacity to work with complex binary code systems that are supposed to flash before their eyes in an enormously fast-paced sequence. And people that have not then taken on that task, or the neural network is not functioning correctly, once it's seeded in, it has to run its course. So instead of actually saying, okay, we have got a series of operators inside this reality where the neural network did not live up to the requirements, either due to a flaw in the genetic composition, or because the neural network or the energy system was not compatible with that high level type of energy, or it was connected to a biocode and the physical form that were not operational within that type of 4D energy state that is necessary to be able to read these code systems and connect to the computer as not just looking at it, but actively have an extension of the energy system going in alignment with the computer. That's why they can read it and understand it, because others will look at it and say, I can't look at that. Eyes go back and forth like that, like crazy, and just seeing an entire pattern at the same time. We're seeing that a little bit in Asperger's, which are they are the forerunners of that technology, that genetic modification program. The Asperger's are the forerunners of that computer technology reading mechanism, or computer program reading mechanism. Sorry, I'm not having the right lingo here because I'm not a computer operatist. I am not reading these, but I know that's what it is, and I'm not a hacker either, and I don't have the affiliation for reading complex binary code systems as in the algorithm sequences behind any computer program. I don't know what else to call it. I have done in the 80s, COBOL or that kind of thing. That's very old school, right? But I don't have the newest update because I don't have the insectoid brain to do so. So now you begin to understand the ones that are malfunctioning and did not work. They are the ones that have been pushed into either being, kept in check, sitting in front of the computer all day, playing different types of programs or different types of video games or what have you, always being linked up there. You also have the gamers that are now, it has become a sport, seriously. Can it get more insectoid, more virtual? You're no longer doing the sport. You're just sitting there and you're gaming, and it is called a sport, and you get rewarded for it. So that's also part of it. And then we have the other ones that have just been medicated into a functional state where it's difficult to really rise up to their highest potentials because they're technically horizontally engineered for a specific basic type of work that is part of the transhuman agenda. They are very strict with what they engineer and how they engineer it. So in this, when we talk about understand the holographic reality, we're also beginning to understand psychology of the different races that are here and the idea behind the modification programs and what's going on. And we are to catch up with that, those of us who are doing the transition and trying to get into the point where we can call ourselves pioneers without being part of the programs. That's the game we're in. We are in this game that we show that we can upgrade our neural network by energy work and by the use of clearing processes and the original holographic network of the reality that we're actually part of, so that we are having the correct plugins and the accurate code system and the accurate energy system and the accurate consciousness units that allow us to operate and in a functional way inside this reality by the means of our true understanding of why we're doing what we're doing, which leads us to principle 7. For those of you who have not yet gone through the transition science course material and the template science courses, you will have a little bit of a difficulty in understanding that getting access to different level of reality is only possible when you master the principles in their correct order and learn to work within the pillar project developmental programs where you develop your energy system under a principle. Each layer of your energy system has a correlating principle. It also correlates to, in a trinity structure, to a similar version of for instance, principle 1 is correlated with law number 1 and rule number 1. In the pillar 1.7, you only learn the principles. In pillar 2.8, you also learn the rules. In pillar 3.9, you learn the laws. So you will only be able to work within trinity systems. That's the third dimension. When you have successfully completed the layers of the 1.7 pillar, the layers of the 2.8 pillar, and the layers of the 3.9 pillar, which goes with different perception levels. Again, taught in the whole transition science classes as well as in the whole template science classes. So you get the understanding there in this correct context. When you work with the different perception levels, you are also working with the different code systems, holographically speaking, behind each domain. And that's where we need to understand that contemplation connects to the ability of working with either a principle or a rule or a law within a specific segment of a pillar, within a specific domain that connects to a specific portion of the holographic network. And now you are getting a headache because this is where your brain will just kind of say, yeah, which is why you need to learn to work with information on its 6-layer tiers that goes from linear into processes, into systems, into what we could call, I can't remember. Is it the 5th? That's the integrative, and the 6th where you kind of sum it up and you get the imprint. I know there I skipped the 4th, which is interesting, but it's part of the material and that's not where I want to go in this one because it should already be there. But for the sake of it, I will have it ready for the next video where we can then, or the next podcast, where we can then tie it into some degree. But it's better that 6-layered system, as taught in the first 3 videos of the transition science courses, should be given within that context and not within this context, because then the 6 layers would tie to the mind field, and that's not where it belongs. The 6 layers belongs to the emotional field, the vibrational field. So the 6 layers are the way you create different types of vibrations that will align with your neural network's 6 structural layers, which will then be able to connect to the 9 layers of the mind field on different code systems. So that's why I'm not doing that 6-layered one more time, and that's why my brain blocks it, because that's not the patterns we're working with here. So again, one of the things that we need to learn when we work with holographic information system is that they are located. They are locally situated within a specific pattern, as we also learned from the quantum sciences. There is entanglement, but as we work with a specific sequence of the field, we are locally operating within that frame of references and within that pattern. If we want to go somewhere else, we change our vibration using one of the 6 features of the vibrational energy system, changing the way we work with the information. If we work with it in a linear way, we'll be drawn into the base program. If we work with it in what we call processes, we'll begin to vibrate between 2 balance points, as the Buddha taught us as well, to find the center point that will create synergy and lift us up to what we could call the synergetic understanding of information, where we keep the balance because we transform the 2 oppositions. From there, we can then begin to integrate, that's the fourth dimension, that probably is that one, integrate it into our mind capacity. And that's where the contemplation kicks in and begins to kick in. Because contemplation is about working with complex information system, looking at there are many different levels and understand the pattern. And you can only understand the patterns if you contemplate on the pattern. Hence the difference between meditation that activates the different frequency spectra of your neural network, pushing you into the frontal lobe where you learn to observe all of the lower frequency aspects of your brain, such as the avian limbic system, the rhabdoid amygdala and hippocampus connected to memory. When you feel fear, you cannot access your memory. So you need to be in control of your amygdala. You need to be in control of your fear and flight and your adrenal glands that are connected to the amygdala, which are of rhabdoid origin or parasitic snake origin. You need to control these electrochemical processes to be able to access the memories that are stored in the hippocampus. The hippocampus is tied to the pons and it's tied to the physical system that is controlled by the insectoid level as well, because the insectoid level are controlling our little brain and it's 80% of our neural capacity that is technically stored there. So only if you get to the frontal lobes where you are able to lift all of that energy and become conscious about how you work with your body, how you work with the system of your body, how you work with the processes of your body, will you be able to lift to the frontal lobes in meditation, which you there, if any of you have done Buddhist meditation, you will understand exactly what I'm saying here. What is observance? That is to understand which system that kicks in due to whatever comes your way, so that your reactional pattern will be in concordance with the response you want to have to the event that is coming your way. To whatever comes your way of energy, you will then push. You will understand, let me put it this way, you will understand your bodily reactions. You will understand, that's the insectoid. You will understand your emotional reaction, that's the avian. You will understand your amygdala rhabdoid response in fear or flight or aggression or what we call defense mechanisms, right? And you will understand why all of your energies have been sucked away from the frontal lobe where the mammal genetics technically are positioned, so that you will never activate that higher level of your frontal lobes that are connected to what we call the inner chakra or the inner system, where you begin to get control of your perception field, as in perceiving reality as it actually is. But it doesn't stop there. When you are able to work with these 4 levels of your brain, you are actively taking part of the gray matter, the cerebrum of your brain. And there you will have the 5th state where you will activate certain features that goes with the mind field. I talk about that as well in the whole template science course material, where you will get the last piece of how to move from the limbic emotional driven system and into the mind field that is connected to the frontal lobes. Of course, there's much more to be said there, but that basic build-up is in the template science course 2 and 3, especially in template science course 3, but template science course 3 will not make sense unless you've done template science course 1 and 2. Again, building a pattern of more and more complex holographic information systems that are tied to each other in a pattern of change that is not just flat out as a 2-dimensional pattern, but it is in many different aspects of reality connected to all similar nodal points in the holographic network that has the same configuration or vibrational state due to the laws of energetic and genetic affinity. So that means that once you activate a specific portion of the holographic information system of the pattern, you ring as a spider in its web on one level of the web, but the entire web will vibrate. So all similar webs will vibrate as well, all of the other patterns. And that's entanglement. So that's here giving you a holographic expression or understanding of quantum sciences, because the quantum field ties into the fourth dimension. So what you also need to understand here is that when we talk about the entanglement and the patterns, and when you are creating that type of information, you need your brain to be able to work on all 5 levels. And that's why I keep saying to those of you who are listening, you are working on a spectrum. You will always begin at the low, the inside the base program, and then you are in your energy work to clear what stands in the way and blocks you from accessing the higher levels of your neural networks that connects you to the higher capacities of your brain. Once you have cleared that one out and you learn to vibrate your energy up in meditation, you go from alpha to beta to delta to theta. And you go deeper and deeper into clear out deeper and deeper layers of your energy system. And you will there discover that once you kind of run through the brainwave frequencies, you will shift into density energies. And there you will develop your inner sight, inner hearing, and the understanding of how to work with energy correctly. And that's the inner chakra that technically kicks in, lifting you up to the higher capacities of your neural network. And that's the inner system, which has been hidden from many teachings, chakra teaching systems, and only given to the ones that actually understands what we call the Kala chakra version of it. So the normal chakra system teaching systems are all about the emotional field. The 7 chakras are all about the emotional field. But the inner chakra lifts you into another, all depending on how far you go, a system that connects to the different levels of the brain and activates the different glands in the brains and chakras that are also part of the brain. And we're here just saying vortices of energy. And these vortices of energy will eventually begin to spin and there activate the true neural network that goes with the holographic network of our reality. And once that happens, your brain will no longer be limited to the base program frequency settings, but will expand into the holographic network of the reality, where you then begin to connect. Your brain is connected to the holographic network of the reality field you're part of, as you are taught in Pillar 3.9. And therefore you also understand that in this work, you have yourself to deal with in the base program. Then you have the understanding of others as you lift into your emotional field and clear that one out and work through the principles 2, 3, 4. Then you go to principle 5 that goes with the correct knowledge, where you technically should kickstart your inner chakra and activate the inner guru system that works on different steps, where you clean out your belief systems, you clear out all of the mental processes that you have had as part of the base program. You build a completely new way of processing complex information systems. You learn to see them as codes. And that's why it's not been widely taught as the normal chakra teachings, because they are all easily to go to with sounds and imagery and all of the features that goes with the left and right hemisphere, mostly working what we say with the sound system of the left hemisphere and the visual system of the right hemisphere, and the heart in that trinity structure, and not as much with what we say the higher capacity of the left hemisphere. And that's technically connected to the Y chromosome, and that's why males have been shut down on that portion of their capacity, and females do have it as well. As we know, we have our portions of our dad, right? But we need to shift it out of that one and get into what we call the XX chromosome version of the higher fourth cycle mental capacities, as we're taught in the 410 pillar. Most of the humanoid shift from sorry about that, they shift from pillar 1, 7, 2, 8, 3, 9 into 5, 10, because they are working with the nuts and bolts of our reality again, and thereby linking up to a different type of neural network capacity, or should we call it density network capacity of their organic vessels, which ties completely to the physicality and the ability to operationally transform spatial energy. Females are good at transforming what we call middle domain or inner domain types of energies. Men can, or the YX should be able to work with the inner domain type of holographic features as well, as they were taught in the 511 pillar. And that's the reality field developmental programs they are specifically working with, where the what we call the fourth cycle races primarily, or the one under the 410 pillar, primarily focused on governance of these reality fields. So again, you're seeing this slight difference in our modalities and capacities. So when an XX is contemplating, the contemplation should be in, what are we doing this for the highest good of the many? That should also be in contemplation of what we call the YX, but they have a little bit of an extra thing to clear out, which often shift into the greater good, which is, of course, crack some eggs to get the result done, right? And that's where things break, because we don't do that in the progressive ways. We do it for the highest good of the many under an enormously harsh protocol of self-responsibility, and always understand for the highest good of the many is tied to as the first of many. So we have that huge responsibility when we work with the reality field. There are also what we call the XX, or the female or the progressive worlds, were also part of the 511 developmental programs. I should know that because that's actually where my forte is. I'm not governmental. I'm not the lower levels of it. I am actually part of the developmental programs and the original construction, but on what we call the core domains, and that is under the ancient one. So that's a little bit, not that we say higher or lower, but it's more complex. Again, it goes into a deeper complex level of working with what we could say reading and accessing the different levels of the holographic network. In the 511, you work with the reality field, looking at the nuts and bolts of the reality field. But when you go to the core domain of the 612, you both have the governmental systems, you have the programs, the root races, the lineages, the construction itself, the continuation of the universal cycles, etc., etc. It gets more and more complex. So that's what our brain is capable of doing. And that's why when we talk about contemplation, we have now we have distinguished and said, okay, meditation is about updating and upgrading your frequency network of the brain by learning to shift between the electrochemical processes of your neural network that connects with the different spaces or the different portions of your brain. And you understand you work with the regress genetics when you work through the insectoid into the avian limbic system, into the amygdala rhabdoid system that controls the adrenal glands, and into all the fight and flight or whatever regressive, defensive, whatever system that is, doesn't matter, and into the frontal lobe where you technically had the mammal races. But the frontal lobe is connected to, it's not something where you put your hat. It is just an activation there so that you become the observer of everything else that's going on in your body. And you use that to self-scan, self-heal, self-repair, self-monitor, and adjust your reactions to whatever comes your way of energy. You notice exactly the bodily reactions to whatever happens. You stop just responding to something that's happening. You are observing what is happening while it's happening, and then you make the right choice following the principles and the rules of engagement and the laws of energy in that situation. So you work on a 9-layer structure when you work with your mind field as well. In the emotional field, you have 9 layers, but these are just 9 different rings of vibration that goes with your heart field and your ability to access different nodal points in the holographic network by vibrating on each and one of these 9 rings. Your mental field tells you the complex information system that belongs to that ring of vibration in the holographic network. And that's where we use contemplation. That's where we get ourselves into the correct vibrational state in our heart field, having cleared our timelines, so that we can connect to one of the 9 layers of our mind field using the inner chakra system of our brain that has activated 5 specific access points, neural network access points, or energy vortices that are part of your brain beyond the frequency spectrum. I explained that in the whole template science course 3. Once you have activated these 5 centers, that's also what you need to activate to make what we could call a willed exit, like the Buddha did, because he had activated that. The white seers would seed that information into our reality field. Hence, the need to distort that teachings, because it was predominantly aimed at males. Distorting that information, it was the extra to the Brahmic chakra system of the Nagas. Hence, the Nagas took that over with Nagayuna and still called it Buddhism, but changed it into being under the control of the Nagas, which is why the Buddhist teaching system is never going to reach its full potentials as it was supposed to. They have the words, but it's linked up to a thought system and a technology and regress genetics that are enormously parasitic. And it ties to the underworld. That is why we also have a faction within the Buddhist teachings that are so dark that even the darkest ones will not even go there. Okay? So that's how you transform the original enlightenment into becoming dark light scanners. Not to go there. Just saying. So with any teaching system that belongs to the old world order program is infected, contaminated, distorted, parasitic, and all of you doing that, you need to get your beautiful ass out of these thought forms, out of these systems. Begin to clear your own system and get access to your own inner knowledge. That is part of your energy system. That is connected to who and what you are. And stop relying on the information systems that used to be part of the old world order hijacking races. They are no longer functional. They are being shut down. So that's also part of the ones. Are you ready to learn new, or are you so locked in your old ways that you are not adjusting to the flexibility, to the adjustment rate that follows with the original 4th dimension? Because it's all about progressing your vibrational state into being able to process more and more complex information systems, from where you can access more and more complex layers of our reality field, from where you can reconstruct your original energy system on all 9 layers that are connected to the outer domain, and clear all of these 9 layers to be able to have the 9 layers of correct vibration, the 9 layers of correct perception, and the 9 layers of correct consciousness unit utilization, following the principles, the rules, and the laws for the highest good of the many. That's what we learn via the first 5 principles. The inner knowledge should always be used for the highest good of the many. And then you move from that inner knowledge into correct partnerships, where you understand that the correct partnerships are to be in alignment with the highest principles, the highest rules, and the highest standards that goes with the highest purity rate, the highest, sorry about that, I got a little bit confused there, the highest purity rate, the highest standards, and the highest progression rate. That is the correct partnership. And the correct partnership is always to be measured within when we talk about the highest purity rates, you should only be around other people, other beings, other races, inner and outer domain-wise. No matter what domain you are part of, no matter what section of the holographic network you're part of, should always be amongst people that are working for the highest good of the many, effectively for the highest purity rate, and being by that as harmless as possible and transform everything that comes their way. Secondly, the highest standards goes with the vibrational field, where whatever energy you emit, whatever energy you send out, whatever energy you are composed of, whatever energy is in your heart should always be of the highest standard. And that means following the highest light building structures of the vibrational field that works with the transformed energies of the original vibrational field of the original outer domain, so that once you shed off what is no longer of use, you transform it into its highest standard, so that will be the foundation of the light body. Then you also work with what we call the highest progression rate, where you understand that your perception field and your connection to the outer domain holographic network is all about code systems, and the codes you are building should be of that highest progression rate standard that will lead to the correct elevation processes. So that once you're done with the outer domain, you will shift due to the laws of energetic and genetic affinity to the locality in the overall universal structure where your energy system is vibrating and consciously is aligned with at that point of your being, that state that you have reached by your own work. So contemplation is all about building these complex code systems into your mind field by working with information, understanding that information are building tools to recalibrate, restructure, and upgrade your mind field to be able to process complex information systems on each of the 9 layers that your mind field is composed of. Everything that are knowledge or is knowledge that is connected to the outer domain or connected to the distorted version of the middle domain, aka spiritual teaching systems, will keep you stuck in the older version of the 4th cycle or keep you stuck inside the base program. So to be able to shift your perception out of these, you need new sciences, you need new frames of references, you need new modalities of work with information, you need new ways to see yourself, you need new ways to be around others, and you need new ways to participate in the world that you're part of. And that's where the new reality program comes in. That's the alien version or the extra systemic version of adapting our holographic network to be able to process the host field plugins as well as the host field code systems. So if we look at the Old World Order program, it was kept up by the Alien Information Planetary Network, the APINs, which were typically lodged into our reality field in the what we call the outer domain holographic network via either crystal pillars, power pillars, alien crafts, alien technology, different types of prohibiting technology, underworld factions, underworld forces, spells, magic, all sorts of shit, which is why all of that connect to the Old World Order programs is not something we want to be connected to, because as all of the viability rates or all of the viable genetics and energy systems are being shifted out and are moving into what we could call timelines that are not connected to the colonizing races, that are not connected to any of the older versions of our reality field, which will be pulled into the abyss in different stages. We are giving ourselves access to renewed energy, but to preserve the host fields, we must align with these code sequences in the correct manner so that we do not barge in and be the elephant in the china shop and destroys everything. So therefore, we are going through some pretty serious modulation programs where we will be tested over and over and over again. And right now, it's like when we talk about my work and my business, the whole academy, I have to renew my allowance to do this work every month. It's not as a kind of, yeah, you kind of got it, the allowance. No, I have to prove over and over and over and over again I am allowed to do what I'm doing, that I'm not violating in any ways or forms the new directives. And I have to prove that by being the best version of myself, so to speak, having the highest purity rate, the highest standards, and the highest progression rate, and doing to some degree what I'm being asked to do as the whole Project New Reality Google site, which is where I kind of say, okay, you want me to do that? I can do that because I can use it as a transformative tool to rebuild my original minefield. Because it gives me complex information systems I can process. But because I am part of the original transformative energy system, the pillar projects, I can then look at it and then work with it within the concept of our reality. And by that, look at what you're doing here. Does it work or does it not work? By that, discussing it, by that, working with it energetically, by focusing on it, I naturally go into a transformative state. They can use that, which is why I'm allowed to do so, because that will teach them, this is how this reality works. So we need to adapt here, we need to adapt there, we need to clear this, we need to clear that, so that we do not repeat the mistakes of the past and the other races that have been here. And thinking that their technology is in alignment with this, the code systems of this construction, because they are not. They are not interested in seeding it in and taking over the construction because they don't want to be part of the ancient ones due to the laws of energetic and genetic affinity. What you focus on, you become part of. But they are interested in prolonging what they are implementing here so that it doesn't break down within 2 weeks. And that has been a very long learning process for these incoming races to understand the enormous amount of contamination and infection and distortion that is part of the human population, that is part of our base program, that is part of the original reality field. And they thought that they just could take over the hijacking races and their technology and adapt it. But what they have discovered is the layers of all of the distortion, all of the misuse and wrongful use of it, as I talked about earlier, that the entire business is so corrupted that there's actively and effectively nothing that they can take into use. They have to rebuild everything, and that's why they ended up with the event program and the matrix of change, which I will return to once I have built the bridge for you from the different steps of the information so that you get to the point where you understand why that is. Not as in, oh yeah, then I give consent and accept. Not at all. We're not compliant. We pick our fights, but we understand what we're dealing with so that we can work with it in transformational processes, that when we are in place, we are still doing it under their directives and their regulations because we are on a diplomatic green card. So we respect what they are doing because it is now de facto their world, since no humans have stood up and taken the position of being the new government. And trust me, I have tried, but that were not in the cards for me, and that's not what I'm here to do. So therefore, the attempt to do that were technically not in alignment with my original mission statement I got from the councils. It was not to create a new governmental structure here, but to clean up all the old so they could release themselves and move on. Hence my work as a releaser. I'm here to disconnect the progressive worlds. That's what we're supposed to do in the outer domain. We are not supposed to build tents here. We're not supposed to build houses here. We are supposed to do our work and then get back to the middle domain and continue our journey with the clearing and the upgrading we have done successfully in the outer domain, so everything that's no longer of use can be shed off and pushed into the abyss. Decompose and cease to exist entirely. Okay, so with that little sequence here, I think I will end this video and we'll continue the next one. Thank you.